Welcome to Money Talks with me, Gerald, Mr. G. Mwandiambira. This is the show that will address your money conversations, the day-to-day matters that we sometimes ignore or simply do not know enough about regarding our finances. Today we're talking about online fraud, identity theft, and other digital crimes. And to tackle this minefield of jargon, myths, and facts, we have Samke Mhlongo, the founder and chief executive of TNC Wealth Partners, and Nyanga Menze, a victim of online crime. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gerald.
I'm going to start with you, Samke. In terms of cybercrime, what is it? How broad is the definition? And for the average South African watching, what does it mean to them?
Thanks, Gerald. So basically, cybercrime is crime that is done digitally, and it can be done via computer. So wherever you have an internet connection, it can be done over the phone, because that's digital as well, and also via SMS texts. The most common fraud that we see is via phishing, where these fraudsters will then email you and try and phish information from you that allows them to then access your bank accounts or even your emails and try and then conduct that fraud. So any links that are, coming from funny emails, links that are coming from what looks like to be your bank's actual email, but not really, always try and avoid, and always rather go into the full banking website or call the bank back on the number that's listed on the official website and then say, have you asked me for this information?
So it's mainly around bank crime. So Nyanga, you have an experience. I guess we'll go straight right into it. Yeah. What was your experience regarding cybercrime, and tell us about it?
I think it was sometime 2018, earlier January. I received a lot of emails. And then there was one specific one also on my Facebook account, because also I was into trading. So I then decided to put money into a specific account that I was told, if you put money on this specific account, maybe in 3 or 2 days later, it will come back. You're going to get it back more than you deposited the money. So that is one experience that I have regarding online banking, regarding this fraud and all those things. So
Nyanga's experience, Samke, is really, it's a mix of the two. I mean, he gave his personal details voluntarily, expecting a return on some sort of investment. Is this also a type of crime which is growing? Is cybercrime on the increase in South Africa?
Yes, I think cybercrime is on the increase worldwide because you've got a larger uptake of digital transactions, and a lot more people are playing online. And what happened to Nyanga is just, I guess, because of your interests and the fact that you were already in trading, you're probably posting about trading, about following these sort of investments, and it made it easier then for the fraudsters to identify you as an easy target. And remember, it's not just your details that you gave over, you actually transferred money over. So that's more financial fraud, Ponzi scheme, I'm assuming. But, you can see how the digital scamming and frauding can actually get you to voluntarily hand over your money. And I mean, there's very little recourse there if you've agreed to the terms and conditions that would cover those fraudsters. Now,
Samke, he mentioned Facebook. You're someone who's pretty active on social media. You understand the dynamics. What kind of information should we be sharing publicly on social media platforms? What are the things to look out for? Because obviously there is a line you draw as to how much you can tell the outside world. What should we be doing what are the do's and don'ts of social media?
So the definite don'ts are don'ts that help paint your financial picture as a consumer. So you know that when you're applying for a bank account or you're applying for any sort of financial product, the financial services providers will ask for your name, surname, ID number, telephone, address, place of employment. With that information, you can then very easily pose as someone. And a lot of us actually put out all that information on social media. A lot of people put out their actual ID numbers on banks' social media pages to say, this is my name, surname, and ID number, I have a problem. Why would you want to do that? With just those 3 pieces of information, people can access and transact and pose as you. Now,
Nyanga, you made a loss. Did you get your money back?
No.
Have you tried? And what was the impact and your learning from your experience?
I decided to stay away from such things. But then There was also another one like what Samke said, because there was also a website where I placed my banking details. I mean my ID number and my name. And then each and every month I would get a debit order from the bank that I would use. I even stopped that. I even stopped using that bank because every month I was deducted money that I don't even know where is it going to.
Now, I'll ask you a question. What drove you? I mean, obviously, you went to the website, you wanted to make money. What was attractive about the website? What did you see which made you, maybe I should go for this? Because clearly your experience might be something which can help someone who's watching.
Yeah, I mean, Mr. G, the website that they created was more appealing to me in a sense of, okay, it's more of an investment. You put certain money, let's say 1,000 Rand, and then maybe in 2 days or in 3 days, you get it back like 3,000 Rand. Of course, everybody wants money, and especially if it's an investment type of thing. But I didn't have, or I don't have the knowledge beyond that about these guys scamming and all those things. But I never got the money back, and that was it.
So lesson learned. So he spoke about knowledge, and at TNC Wealth Partners, that's one of the things you do. How can people have more knowledge around managing their personal financial affairs and avoiding some of the typical mistakes? Younger is honest in that he's saying he didn't know. How can people know more?
Well, I think it also starts with the basics, Gerald. You know, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is the first principle that really applies throughout life. And I think also the second basic is if you don't know what is being what product is being sold or service is being offered to generate those returns, then how do you expect those returns to be made? And, you know, seeing is believing. Why don't you Google and see what other people's experience has been of that investment platform? Because a lot of people, there's a lot of information now online about rogue investments or promises, and you can find that. So maybe if you get a reference from someone who's tried it, get a reference from online to see what other people's experience has been. And to be honest with you, if those returns, like tripling your money in 3 days, is ridiculous.
Too good to be true.
Far from the truth, you know. Compare it to what other normal standard banking investments are doing. And if it's too far out, then who is this individual coming from the air that can beat the returns that are being offered from the big 5-6 banks in the country, and how are they doing it? Okay,
now Samke, you also mentioned a word right at the beginning of our conversation. You mentioned phishing or phishing.
Phishing.
Phishing. There's other words I'd like you to maybe share with us. There's phishing, smishing, vishing. What's the difference between phishing, smishing, vishing?
Phishing is via email. Smishing is via text, so SMS ishing. And then vishing is where you get where the fraud is being committed via voice. So whether it's a voice message or those automated calls, you know, your phone rings and it's like, hello, you have been selected for. So that's basically just some of the jargon that is used for the different forms and ways in which these scamsters are operating.
Now, with all this is happening, should I be online? Can I avoid being online? Is it still possible to not be online? In your experience and in terms of giving advice, what do I do? Because now you've mentioned that there's people who can call you, people who can text you, people who can literally find things about you. How can I protect myself? Should I be online? Or what's the best solution?
You can't avoid being online. It's like saying because someone committed fraud via phone, you're now going to stop using the telephone. But you can just be smarter and more aware and ask more questions. You know, the first question is, does this thing make sense? You know, other questions are, where did you find my details? That's one of the first questions I ask whenever someone calls me. And what are you selling me? Where did you get my details? Is there somewhere I can verify who you are? And I mean, now a lot of, financial services providers need to be registered with the Financial Sector Conduct Authority. You know, people offering small loans need to be registered with the National Credit Regulator. There are bodies, professional bodies, that any professional investment offering needs to be registered with. So ask those simple questions and verify as well.
Yanka, you spoke about debit order.
Yeah,
I mean, there's been a lot about the 99 Rand debit order scam, etc., and you lost money through that.
Yeah.
did you get compensated for the debit orders? Because I think debit orders are slightly different to online banking because a contract must exist. Did you get your money back? Did you reverse those transactions?
Yes, so what I did is I did reverse the transactions, but the bank would charge me at a cost to reverse that money. So like, for an example, I know there was a debit order that would come every month deducting 300 rands. So I would go and reverse it. Every month I would go and reverse it, but when it comes back, it wasn't 300 rands. Maybe let's say it was 270. Bank would charge their own money, and then I had to stop that debit order. Yeah, so that's what happened. The bank would give me back the money when I went to reverse the money.
Now, Samke, in terms of debit order scams, your experience in terms of dealing with your clients and banks in general, are they starting to help people, or is it still a free-for-all?
What do you mean by free-for-all?
Well, I mean, the scam has been going on, and some of the banks have started putting in precautions against debit order scams. How can I, in terms of when dealing with someone, make sure that what's the discipline? Should I be checking my bank statement every month for debit orders?
Absolutely. So you must be checking your bank statements, checking your bank notifications every time a debit order is set up, setting up those notifications if you haven't done so already, and then questioning where that debit order is coming from. Exactly. And I mean, like with Younger said, he actually gave out those details, but some of these scams aren't from details you've given out. So if the fraudsters can piece together your information, they can come into your bank account and pose as though this contract is a legitimate contract. And remember that banks are just simply the middleman. Without the functionality of honoring debit order requests, you know, our financial system and personal banking system, you know, would fall apart. So they trust that when a third party gives them a contract with a signature that looks like yours, because they do verify the signature, then this debit order is authorized. So it is actually your responsibility as the account holder, because that is who's ultimately responsible for the account, to check that what's going in and coming out is what you intended to. Banks can't play the functionality of checking whether what's going in and out of your account is legitimate or not, because one, it would hinder transactions and make transacting more difficult. You know, they've established a system of trust which enables you to go swipe your card at an outlet, take those goods and go home with them because they've said there's funds in this account. So if now you are expecting them to say this is legitimate, this is not, imagine your transacting ability will also be limited. So we as credit consumers, as banking consumers, need to take the responsibility that comes with the fact that you own a banking account and do those checks on a monthly basis. Well,
Samke is telling us and reminding us that it is our responsibility to know what's going on in our financial affairs and indeed with regards to our personal finances. Join us after the break as we continue our conversation on online crimes. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Money Talks with me, Gerald and Mr. Jim Wandiambira, and we're talking online crime. And still with me in studio, I've got Samke Mhlongo, the founder and chief executive of TNC Wealth Partners, and Younger Menze, who's a victim of online crime. Now, in the previous segment, we pretty much went through all the details in terms of the do's, the don'ts, some of them, and defined what online crime is. Now, you spoke, Samke, earlier on that cybercrime is something that is expanding in the world. It's a growing crime. It's probably one of the newest crimes which is taking effect on our finances. How can we perhaps delve deeper into social engineering in terms of how do these people get our information? Is me having a Facebook account a risk, or should I have Insta? Which type of social media account is safe, or are any of them safe?
None of them are safe. I would say basically any information that you put out, and it doesn't even need to be on digital platforms, even information that you fill out when you are entering secured premises. You put in your name, your surname, your ID number, your vehicle registration, where you work, and that is all information that can be sold and used by scamsters. So I would say, you know, that practice of requiring individuals to put in their full ID numbers on a register where you can see other people's ID numbers is actually not very good practice and does compromise your security. So anywhere you're putting out any of your identification information is a risk.
Now, Yanga, we spoke also briefly about love.
Yes.
Are you married?
I'm in a serious relationship.
Yes. Okay, in a serious relationship, so we'll tread carefully.
Okay.
Now, have you heard of people perhaps on dating websites? Have you ever tried a dating website and shared information there?
Not really, not really.
So the trend right now is, what's it called? Tinder. And people putting their details, their pictures and stuff on there. I heard of a story where a lady, you know, essentially met a pretty guy and he was sending poetry, doing all the right things online, of course. And eventually he then tells her, oh, by the way, I'm stranded, you know, please send me a small amount. And then you send a small amount. And often what then happens is they actually send you money as well. So the crime is actually quite sophisticated. They find a reason to send you something so you get comfortable. And in the end, the lady lost almost 600,000 Rand. The other one I heard lost a motor vehicle. I know it's not your area of expertise, Samke. What would you say to those people who want to find love but are restricted to online dating? So how can they be more cautious there?
So I think the example you give actually extends beyond online dating because I do have a client that lost about 170,000 Rand, female, through a rogue relationship that actually started at the gym.
Yo.
So, you know, in terms of it being an online crime, is it really? Because you are actually transferring that money to this individual that has posed as one thing and they're not. And I think the important bit to note here is that there is actually no recourse for you if you transfer funds willingly to a third party. So it becomes a civil claim where you need to then sue them personally for that amount. And basically, if you recover the money, good for you, but if you don't, there's actually very limited recourse around that. I had my client go to the police station, lodge the case, and there was very little they could do. They went to his address and found that actually he wasn't single as he claimed to be. His wife and child opened the door and he pled ignorance and didn't know what she's talking about. So
wow,
be careful.
So be careful. And that's voluntarily. Now, in terms of your ID document, Yang, I'll ask you a simple question. Where is your ID right now and how secure is it? Is it easy to access your ID right now?
No, it's at home. I keep it safe.
Okay. And in terms of the telltale signs, surely when you're giving the money, when you're on that website, were there any signs which you picked up that something was not okay? When did you start feeling that something had gone wrong?
The next day. The next day.
So that was pretty quick.
Next day.
When was the money supposed to come back?
It was supposed to come the next day.
Okay.
Because it was like a 24-hour thing. But the next day when the guy, because when I tried to call him, his phone was off. That's when I knew what he, you know, this thing is, it's pretty much I just gave the money away.
Okay. Yeah. Now, in terms of precaution against Samke, is there an insurance policy I can consider to protect me? I mean, businesses have cybercrime policies. Is there such a thing which can help an individual from themselves or not?
Not that I know of. You know, insurance against an investment. Because what he did was invest and lose money. So
well, I'm talking more general. Cybercrime. What can we do? Is it possible? I haven't seen one, but I'm asking maybe you have.
No, I haven't seen cybercrime insurance.
So it's one of those crimes where right now, once your money is gone, it's toodles. There's no recourse in most instances. Now, in terms of internationally, okay, you've traveled a bit. Is cybercrime as bad outside Mzansi? So are we the only ones who should be taking precautions, or is it a global thing? Are we less clever than the rest of the world, or pretty much it affects anyone who's online?
It affects anyone that's online. And I mean, remember that even internationally, you know, the citizens of that country are not a homogenous group. So you find that in America, in the US, there are a number of older ladies, single older women, especially because there's a bigger online dating culture there that are being taken advantage of. So I don't think we can put a blanket description of the type of sophistication of the citizens of a particular country or region. But definitely, and cybercrime is on the rise globally. And remember that when you are online, you're on a global village, so you don't segregate it by region. You know, anyone online, any online community becomes a target. Now, have you ever been on an online marketplace, Yanga? Have you bought anything online recently?
No.
Okay, so what I'm trying to get at is I'm trying to have a view in terms of online marketplaces. So we've spoken about cybercrime where they take your information, but there's also the cybercrime where the goods are advertised. So it's an online shopping platform, a car. Again, the usual telltale sign, it's too good to be true. It's very cheap, but there's a picture of a car. How can I protect myself from a marketplace? So shopping platforms, you know, how do I know who's legit? So I think, you know, you can look for, especially in terms of the payment, on how you're making the payment on that marketplace, because verified by Visa, for instance, protects the information that you do put across to that website. So make sure that it is an established website or online marketplace, you know, your eBays, Amazons, Alibaba. Make sure that, you know, there are a number of retailers, a number of traders, and you can actually see the reviews. So go through the reviews about that particular reseller as well. And also then just make sure that you look for those signs like a verified by Visa, a PayPal type payment system, you know, those payment systems that you're familiar with, that you know. If an online marketplace doesn't have any of that, it then becomes difficult for you to lodge a complaint or trace your funds. Yanga, would you do it again?
No, I don't think so.
What would you advise to someone who's watching, who maybe was in your shoes in terms of using hindsight? Now that you know better, what would you advise someone?
Yeah, pretty much like what Samke said, do more research before you go into things like online banking. Just make sure that you don't do what I did. Even if it sounds too good to be true, you just have to make sure you do all your research. And then if it's legit, you can go ahead. But if it's not, don't do it, because you're going to lose your money and there's no way of getting your money back.
Okay, so Samke also gave us some very good pointers and tips. She said, due diligence, 2 words. Do your research before you do anything online. Make sure you're on the right website. Make sure it's secure. Payment methods. She also spoke about making sure that if you're paying by card, that it is one of the payment methods which is approved by the big card companies, as well as personal information. Be careful, because you need to guard your personality and your information. Now, Samke, as a takeout, what advice would you give to anyone out there who's interested in social media and wants to be active? They want followers and they want to win the world with their opinion, but at the same time, they need to be safe. What's your parting shot in terms of online and cybercrime?
I think just being aware before you post anything that there are people who are actively looking for information to use to commit these crimes, and just keeping that in the back of your mind will keep you mindful about what sort of information you put out. So each time before you log on your phone, on your laptop, on your tablet, just remember that there are people sitting on the other side, and also in what's called the dark web, which is where we don't even, as ordinary citizens, operate. You know, there's a whole other internet world where people who commit and solicit these crimes operate. So just keep that in the back of your mind.
And Bitcoin, just as a parting shot, you just talked about the dark web and the word Bitcoin came to my head. Is cybercrime also affecting the Bitcoin buyers? Because I've got a few experiences on that one as well. Is it legit from your experience?
Is what legit?
Bitcoin.
I don't even know how to answer that, because what do you mean is it legit? What
in
legitimizes
terms of
it?
Most websites
it's a
trading
currency that is accepted. It's got a willing buyer, willing seller market, which legitimizes it. However, because of the anonymity. Let's try that again. The fact that you remain anonymous as a Bitcoin holder has actually resulted in a rise in contraband and illegal transactions, and that's actually resulted in more and more governments clamping down on the usage of Bitcoin, which is one of the reasons why you saw the value fall off so much. So Bitcoin and cybercrime, there is a link, because a lot of cyber crimes can be committed using Bitcoin and you remain anonymous because of the anonymous privilege it gives you. But does that mean Bitcoin is legitimate or not? Is there a willing buyer? Is there someone willing to exchange goods or services for Bitcoin? Yes. Therefore, it legitimizes it as a payment method.
Well, I'd like to thank our guests for joining us. Samke, always a pleasure to have you on the show. And Yanga, thank you for coming. Yeah, cybercrime is, again, one of those topics which is not as straightforward as we would like to think. But as Samke has shared, due diligence and just being aware is probably the best thing you can do for yourself in terms of protecting yourself. So from me, Gerald, Mr. G. Mwandiambira, thank you for joining us on Money Talks. We'll be back soon with another exciting episode where we'll discuss some of these topics which will change your view on money. Thank you.